Everyone's been talking about Porsche depreciation recently, myself included. I did 5 depreciated 911s, 5 cars that are dropping massively in price from the Porsche brand, and today, 5 Porsches I think are quite underrated but still offer really great value for money. Let's get straight into it. Hit the like button if you like this kind of content, subscribe as well if you're new. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. Let's kick this video off with the 987 Cayman R, the car that pretty much kicked off the concept that a Cayman could offer something a bit more exotic than your average everyday sports car, and a car that I consider to be highly underrated as a bit of a longer term investment piece. It comes with a 3.4 litre flat 6 engine, which makes 325 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 4.8 seconds. Not bad for the second oldest car on the list, but wait until you see where the oldest car comes in. The idea behind the Cayman R was to make a limited production race car for the roads, harking back to the old school 1967 911R, where they focus on being more lightweight. With this in mind, there are just around 100 on the roads here in the UK, with examples coming off and on being sawned, and they are 55 kilograms lighter than the Cayman S. Considering the prestige behind the R badge, with the 1967 R going for over 100 grand and the more recent 911 991R going for 400k plus, the Cayman R seems like a bit of a steal, given they'll run you around £33,000 at the bottom end, and prices haven't really moved significantly in quite a while, so for 50k you'll be getting a 2012 model with 20,000 miles on it. One thing you'll notice is the graphics around the car, which also hark back to that original 1967 911R, though it doesn't get the bonnet graphics that some of those and the recent 991 did get. But less about the stickers. It came at a time when Porsche still weren't really letting the Cayman fully loose, so that it wouldn't compete directly with the 911 Carreras and beyond, so it's not quite as aggressive as the GT4s we see on the roads today, but you can still get it with carbon back bucket seats and lightweight panels and parts used around the car that combine with the Porsche active suspension management with stiffer and lower springs to get the car handling better. I would actually equate it more to being like a GTS competitor than a GT4 one, but it definitely paved the way for the more track focused 911 beating Caymans. As it came with the 0.2 generation 987, it's also known to be more reliable, which is a real positive, though owners have in some cases complained about the stiffer ride. Next up, we have the generation that actually followed the 987, the 981, despite those numbers going backwards in typical Porsche fashion. I mean, I'm honestly interested to see what generation follows the 992 911, considering the 993 already existed back in the 1990s. But anyway, I'm getting distracted. The 981 Boxster GTS is a lovely car and is effectively the best Boxster money can buy, except for the Spider, which shares a few bits with the more aggressive Cayman GT4. You'll also get a 3.4 litre flat 6 in this, putting out 325 brake horsepower, I'm managing not to 60 in 4.8 seconds, which completely matches the Cayman R we just spoke about. Like the R, it got a slightly more powerful engine over the S, but most noticeably a really nice new body kit with new alloys and a bunch of other options to help set it apart from the standard S. It also got a new passive sports suspension option too, which drops the car down a bit and gets it handling just a bit tighter than the S and standard Boxsters. Even reviews of the GTS in some cases mention how similar the concept of the GTS was to the Cayman R in terms of being a fast road car, just without some of these stripped out interior parts, as it remains pretty focused on being more luxurious and sporty than aggressive and sporty. But that doesn't take away from its capability. Having driven the 981S, it was an incredibly dynamic car, and with the extra performance the GTS offers, reviews have been very positive about how well it takes a corner, with its lower centre of gravity, excellent balance and informative feel. The interior is nice too, a comfortable place to be, although I've always thought that the steering wheel in the 981 needs an update. To get into one of these, you need to spend around £37,000 at the bottom end, and 50k will get you into a 2015 model that's done around 15,000 miles, which would be an average of less than 2,000 miles per year. Strangely, suspension corrosion is known on these, as well as around the exhaust brackets and heat shields, but outside of that, these have been very reliable in general. Maintenance costs remain Porsche relevant, of course, and there have been some odd issues with the PDK gearbox, but nothing common. We're sticking to the GTS badge now, but jumping forward to another generation, to the 718 Cayman GTS, which again offers the best Cayman money can buy outside of the GT4, and even then it's probably the better overall fast road car, given that is what its purpose really is. This is where it gets a bit spicy though. Porsche have been known for their naturally aspirated flat 6 engine for quite some time in cars like this, and turbocharged in the more aggressive cars, but they put a 2.5 litre turbocharged flat 4 engine into this, which puts out 359 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 4.7 seconds, which definitely ruffled some feathers, if only because it doesn't sound quite as good or as Porsche-like. The theoretical question of why Porsche went down this route is because it offered more torque and horsepower with better fuel consumption, but in reality a key driver of this was of course the environmental restrictions on mass production cars like the Boxster and Cayman. There are of course pros and cons to this. It is more performant than the previous generation, but a lot of people, myself included, love a naturally aspirated flat 6 and the way that it feels. I wouldn't let that put you off though. With the right exhaust, these can sound a little like another famous turbocharged flat 4, namely the Impreza WRX STI. Outside of that though, the 718 Cayman is a really lovely shape, built on the same platform as the 981, but of course versus that Boxster, it has the hardtop roof for rigidity rather than relying on the heavy parts that go underneath the car. The main difference for me is the interior, which does modernize the car a fair bit. It also only lasted for a few years, from 2017 through to 2020, when Porsche decided that the turbo wasn't the perfect formula and instead chucked a naturally aspirated 4-litre flat 6 into them, which came from the Cayman GT4. Sadly, it was slightly detuned, but it still had more power than the turbocharged cars at 394 brake horsepower. This is slightly more expensive than some of the other cars on this list though, starting at around £44,000, with 50k getting you a 2018 model that's done around 20,000 miles. Unlike the 2.5 in the Impreza, these are very reliable so far, and given the 2.5 litre block has been less desirable than the naturally aspirated ones, prices are becoming pretty difficult to ignore. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you are, then do hit the like button and subscribe as well if you're new. And I want to hear in the comments down below your thoughts on the Cayman and Boxster against the 911. A lot of purists much prefer the 911 to the Boxster and Cayman. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you rate the Cayman and Boxster alongside 911 or not? Next up we have one of my personal favourite looking Porsches, and it's not a 911, a Cayman or anything like that. It's the Panamera V6 e-hybrid Sport Turismo, and it's that estate-like Sport Turismo shape in particular that really gets me going. I honestly think it's a tough decision choosing between the Sport Turismo shape and the Audi RS6 as the most aggressive looking modern day fast estates. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below, but part of me thinks I would go for a V8 e-hybrid Sport Turismo over even the RS6. These come with a 2.9 litre twin turbocharged V6 engine combined with electric power to produce 455 brake horsepower, the most on this list, taking it to 60 in 4.3 seconds, not bad for a car of its size. This is the second generation Panamera, and the Sport Turismo showed up 1 year into the car's production as the first specifically estate-bodied Panamera. It's actually classed as a shooting brake design by Porsche, and though you can get the e-hybrids in the liftback shape as well, the Sport Turismo is the more desirable and therefore expensive version when it comes to second-hand prices. It is also in fact the most expensive car on the list, starting at £47,000, while 50k can get you into a 2018 model with around 50,000 miles on the clock. In its most aggressive spec, the Turbo S e-hybrid Sport Turismo, it actually became the world's most powerful stock estate car, but the V6 still offers plenty of performance and it looks effectively the same too, minus a few minor details, so you're not missing out on too much. It's also the most luxury focused car on the list, and of course the best for a long road trip with more than one passenger, with the rear seats, massive boot and still dynamic handling that will let you enjoy faster or twistier roads. Genuinely, the more I think about these, the more I hope Porsche's current depreciation aggressively drives these down in price a bit more. It'll also manage 34 miles in electric only mode, which means if you live in a city like me, it could be quite a cheap car to run at times, because I rarely have to drive further than about 10 to 15 miles. There are some rare battery issues, though of course over time they may perish and require replacing. They're generally reliable so far, but some owners have had carbon issues, and outside of warranty, repairs can be expensive. We can't have a Porsche video without including their bread and butter, the 911. In this case, we're talking about the 996 Turbo, which is definitely a future classic in my books, even if it's not as rare as the Turbo S. I nearly included the Turbo S instead in this video, in fact, even though it's slightly out of our budget, but then I realised that the main difference between the Turbo and Turbo S is 3 options, which you could also spec onto the Turbo anyway, and some aluminium faced instruments on the dashboard, so considering the price difference, it didn't seem worth it. It is of course a turbocharged car, it's in the name, a 3.6 litre flat 6 twin turbo to be exact, which puts out 420 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 4.2 seconds. Very, very quick for a car that was released to the market in the year 2000. So as I said, the Turbo S just got a couple of spec options which you could still spec onto this, being the X50 package, which included larger turbochargers and intercoolers, a different ECU and quad exhaust, which together made the car more powerful at 444 brake horsepower. The Turbo S also got carbon ceramic brakes, which you could also put onto the Turbo, and a 6-disc CD changer, which you probably wouldn't care about anyway today, especially because the better option now would be to upgrade to the Porsche Classic Communication Management System, which gives Apple CarPlay and all the rest. So Turbo is the thinking person's option between the two then, and the formula remains in line with turbos before and since, the all-wheel drive, wider body, large air intakes and permanent wing all being pretty typical, and to be perfectly honest, you rarely see them driving around these days, so it will feel as exotic as the Turbo S. As it's the oldest car on the list, it's also the cheapest, starting at around £23,000, but they do go all the way up to 50k and beyond, with 50k easily getting you an X50 model from 2003 with 40,000 miles on it. As the oldest car on the list, it comes with the most comprehensive maintenance guides online. And so there you have it, 5 pretty underrated Porsches, in my opinion at least, all of which cost less than £50,000. Very nice. But if you want to see some more depreciated Porsches, then click up here, subscribe as well down here. Massive thanks to the patrons for their support, and to you as well for watching. I'll see you in the next one.